Among Final Fantasy side quests, there's one, in my opinion, that towers over them all. It's the Excalibur 2 quest in FF9, which is the quest for Steiner's most powerful sword, with an attack power of 108, the strongest in the series. But it seems wrong somehow to call this a side quest, because it's more like an Excalibur 2 playthrough. It's simply impossible for a casual player to get the Excalibur 2 on the side of their first time playing FF9 because it requires a huge amount of effort to get it. The Excalibur 2 might just be the hardest weapon to obtain in any Final Fantasy game, or maybe any game at all for that matter. The player is required to reach an area near the end of the final dungeon in under 12 hours in the in-game clock in order to receive it. And you also need to defeat the Lich boss, which is inconveniently right in front of the Excalibur 2's pickup spot. The Excalibur 2 is hard to get for a reason, because even if Steiner was level 1, this sword would still allow him to deal 9,999 damage. Getting the Excalibur 2 is said to be doable in any version of the game, though modern enhancements, such as the ones in FF9 Remastered, have made it significantly easier due to the fact that players can speed up the game, skip cutscenes, turn off random battles, and artificially boost their stats. Even without speeding up the game, the player can potentially get the Excalibur 2 in under 9 hours by making use of the other enhancements. In the original game, however, the Excalibur 2 was even harder to obtain for European players because of the PAL system, which made the game run at 5/6 of the speed due to a lower frame rate. This required players in European countries to obtain the sword in less than 10 hours. Over the years, many guides have popped up online to help players obtain the Excalibur 2, along with tricks to move the game along faster. There's even an Excalibur 2 Perfect Game Challenge, in which players attempt not only to obtain the Excalibur 2, but not to miss any missable items either, and keep their players at the lowest possible level. Typically, players trying to get the Excalibur 2 will skip every skippable conversation, mash through all of the dialogue, and try to find the shortest route through every town and dungeon, which means it's definitely not for first-time players. On the original PS1, if you wanted to skip cutscenes, you'd actually have to glitch out the system by opening the disc cover and then closing it, which would stop those beautiful FMVs from running and cause the game to resume. As a kid, I did try to make an attempt to get the Excalibur 2, and I got all the way to Memoria, the final dungeon, and I missed the Excalibur 2 by just several minutes, and I never tried again. Technically, however, the Excalibur 2 is not missable, because if you fail to reach it before 12 hours, you could allow the internal clock to overflow and restart from the beginning, but you'd have to leave the game running for over 2.5 years to do so. The first thing to do during an Excalibur 2 run is to pause the game and enter the config menu, changing the battle camera to fixed so that the battles start more quickly, turning on auto run, and increasing the speed of messages on the field and in battle. From here, online guides have basically mapped out the entirety of FF9, even going so far as to tell players the exact turns to make, and which dialogue choices result in less text. If all goes according to plan, the player should have reached the end of Disc 1 by 2 hours and 45 minutes. So if you find that you've exceeded that mark, it's necessary to revert back to an older save and try again from there, or maybe even start over. Once you do finally reach Memoria, a minimum of 30 minutes is usually recommended to reach the end of the dungeon and defeat the Lich. By this time, most players are probably sweating, if they haven't been sweating for the last 12 hours. Amusingly enough, the Lich monster is only susceptible to slow magic, and I can't help but wonder if the developers did this to tease all of the speedrunners who've powered their way here. Once the Lich is defeated, the Excalibur 2 can be picked up from a corner in the room marked by an exclamation point. If Zidane examines it, he'll find a note left behind by the person who left the sword there, and then a message pops up saying that the player has successfully received the Excalibur 2. If, however, you exceed the 12-hour mark, the exclamation point no longer appears, and the sword is inaccessible. Unless, of course, you want to leave your game on for the next 2.5 years. If you wanted to, you could actually sell the Excalibur 2 for 19,500 gil, though I'm not sure what kind of psycho would do this to themselves. This is the only ultimate weapon of the game that's not obtainable under normal gameplay conditions, but the stats are far greater than every other character's ultimate weapon, even Zidane's. If you're doing a normal playthrough, Steiner's best weapon would be the Ragnarok, which can be dug up on the outer islands by a chocobo after finding the relevant chocograph. During my research for this video, I found that a lot of Japanese players over the years have made blog posts documenting their personal journeys in search of the Excalibur 2. This player writes on their blog, quote, Final Fantasy IX Strategy Diary number 20. I managed to clear FF9 for the first time, but I can't move on to the next game. Excalibur 2 is the biggest challenge of FF9 and I want to get it at all costs. My first playthrough of FF9 took about 52 hours to clear, so I have to get there within 1/4 of that time, which seems like a real pain, lol. This player gives us an unfortunate update in their FF9 Strategy Diary 23. Quote, It took 6 hours, 31 minutes, and 30 seconds to finish the Black Mage Village. It took about an hour longer than planned, which is pretty tough. I don't want to, but it seems I have no choice but to start over. Sadly, this player starts over yet again in Disc 3 at the 10-hour mark, only to finally succeed in Diary Entry 29, obtaining the sword within a elapsed time of 11 hours, 58 minutes, and 47 seconds. Only 2 minutes to spare. Nice job, Gundam 383. Have any of my viewers managed to get the Excalibur 2? It pains me a little that I've made a failed attempt and never tried again, but FF9 is my most replayed game ever, so I can't really say it was a waste of time, because at that age I'd probably still have been playing FF9 anyway. If you have gotten the Excalibur 2, what system did you play on, and how much time did it take? Did you use any special tricks? I don't think I'll ever try again, but you have to hand it over to the developers for having the guts to create such an absurd side quest, and I don't think there's anything quite like it in any other Final Fantasy game.